So many years ago, I used to think, oh, if only I could do something for God. I just want to do something for God. And in my head, I always thought that meant going on a missions trip and feeding orphans in Bangladesh and doing all these things. But ultimately, God actually places us in uniquely different positions. And we're going to talk about this with John Atchley this morning in small group, how Christians can connect their work, whatever it is, to God's mission. So good morning, John.
How are you? How are you?
Can I just say how much I love this topic from the outset? I think it is so good. And Kat, you summed it up so well from my mentality earlier in my church work as well. I was like, okay, God work equals working at church. Right, John?
Yeah, let's find out, Genesis 1's going to become important for us today. But and I think we have to just please bear with me because I think we're going to start, and it sounds a little bit harsh, but everything works out okay.
All right.
Because it's exactly, when I think about growing up in my church, I thought about what kind of work did I think God valued or was invested in. And I thought about, lots of talk about evangelism and preaching and praying, teaching Bible classes. These felt very spiritual. But like retail and homemaking and accountants and builders, that seems irrelevant
Yeah,
to God's
parking
vision for
wardens,
the world.
accountants,
Yeah.
tax collectors.
Yeah.
We don't like the sounds of those professions.
Well, that's true. I hear you on that. So we just kind of can't equate them to what God's doing. They seem like, what's that about? It seems like I remember it's like the only thing we'd say to them is make sure to come to church each week, try not to swear, and get some Bible studies going. And that's like it.
And make sure you put something healthy in the offering plate as well. Sometimes for business owners, that was a thing that I've heard some frustration from them before too. The spiritual significance of their work is overlooked, but hey, you can kind of pay your way.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, isn't it? So that's kind of been your impression, like Kat and Tom, like with your own experience with what God values in work. It's kind of like just pay a lot of money and come to church. And
yeah, it's really interesting
kind of
too, because I think that for a long time it was, what can I do for God? But actually, it's a revelation when you realize that He has done everything for you so that you can just be.
Yeah. Well, the idea of what it means for, to bring the kingdom come into this world, like we pray that in the Lord's Prayer. And I think it was really helpful to start to realize, as much as we said, it's hard for us to maybe immediately connect the spiritual significance of being an accountant or, working in early childhood or being a lawyer or something. I realize it is a bigger picture than that, John, but what does it mean to do that kind of spiritual work?
Well, I think what I found is that it's like we have two categories. It's like we have a spiritual category and an earthly category. And some work and some actions like preaching or being an evangelist or a missionary are categorically spiritual, and everything else is not. It's earthly. But this is a huge problem, like you guys keep pointing out, is how many people listening today are professional preachers or missionaries or Bible school teachers, Very few probably are in that category. And so we have millions of Christians across the world who I think we've been teaching them they're living at odds with what God wants in this world.
Yeah, well, I've seen the frustration too from people who I think are very genuine. Like they want to do something for God, and their feeling seems to be, well, I can only really do that for the 2 or so hours that I'm at church on a Sunday. So maybe I'm a part of a team somewhere, and maybe I do something on a Wednesday, like maybe you have a small group as well that you run. But then the rest of my life, which is 99% of it, is just kind of filler time, wasted time, unspiritual time.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So I think what I want us to do is let's just go meet God again. In Genesis 1, the first time we ever see God doing anything, what do we see him doing? It says right there, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And so I've assumed previously there's two categories at play again. We think God is up there doing heavenly stuff, but we're down here doing really earthly stuff, and the two don't mix. We're mowing lawns, raising families, and having meetings, and God's like, yeah, that's cool, but it's not really what I'm about. But then you keep reading Genesis 1, and what do you see God do? He kind of switches on the lights. He makes plans for new projects. He takes material things and chaos and makes something useful, organizes it. He plants a garden. He designs and makes beautiful things. He starts a family. when you think about those two categories we mentioned before, earthly and spiritual, what do you guys think? Like in the things I described, what category have they fit into, earthly or spiritual? Planting gardens, organizing material things, planning projects. Like, what
Well,
is
I
that?
think it leans towards thinking that it's all earthly stuff, but I think we know that there's much more going on than what we see, because actually what happens in our physical bodies affects things in the spirit. We're not compartmentalized. We're not two different entities, but actually our soul and our body are one and the same. And that's why God talks about in the Bible, to be good stewards of our earthly bodies as well as being good stewards of this world. So I think they're deeply intertwined.
Yeah, you've nailed it, right? It's like, I think our categories are not where they're failing us. These two categories that are separate, actually, you're right. There's a lot of intertwining. There's a merging there. He's not he's not going and preaching a sermon and pastoring a church in that picture, but we know he's being spiritual. He's being God, and he's acting like a builder, a farmer, a parent. So that tells us we need to rethink our categories. Maybe church work is not the only place where God is at work.
Yeah.
Maybe his work is everywhere.
Well, that's the thing,
And he
right?
wants
If we were
us.
all just, gathering people around to listen to the sounds of our voices, and preaching on mountaintops and in fields and stuff, I mean, if we were all doing that, then there'd be no crops to eat, there'd be no animals to eat. Like, everything would just fall apart, right? Each person needs to play their part, just like many parts of the body, right? We all need to do our different bits to keep that bodily functioning.
That's it. So, like, whatever you're doing, dear listener, whatever you're doing, whether it's retail, hospitality, education, I don't know what it is, just know that God values that work and he's invested in that work. He wants you there. He puts you there for a reason, and you're more like him than you knew. So don't forget that. I mean, if I close my ideas off, at least, I think if you want to know more about that, there's a great book. Tim Keller wrote a book called Every Good Endeavor. It's excellent. Or you can also come to study it where I'm at, South Pacific Bible College. We try to infuse every single part of your life, not just Sunday morning, with God. So please consider those things.
Yeah, well, look, I think we'll give everyone the details they need for that as well in just a moment. But like one final thought from me on this too, and I just want to give a shout out to all the Christian business people right now, because John, something that you said really stirred me here, that I've often felt some of the most inspiring faith-filled people are Christian business people who have succeeded in business for a long period of time, because I don't think anywhere else you really get the rubber meets the road faith and the real world spirituality. Like, we all say things like God's my provider, which is easy when you're on a salary. But when you are out there and trying to make money, trying to live by a Christian ethic in a world that doesn't always have a Christian ethic, with people who are maybe not honest or trustworthy in the same way that you want to be, if you can combine your faith and still make it in the marketplace like that, I've found that people have got a dimension to their faith that you literally do not find in any other environment.
Actually, I'd like to ask a question too. Perhaps if someone's struggling right now, whatever their job is, whether that's being a stay-at-home mum, stay-at-home dad, working as a teacher, working in business, working as a parking warden, working in the justice system, whatever their role is, how can people really find that sense of connection to the mission? What would your encouragement be to them?
I think that's why both of what you said, actually, Tim Keller does cover those things, and Christian business people who are finding it hard to exist in a world where money is such an idol, work is an idol, and then people who are struggling to find the significance in their work. And sometimes the work we do, we don't like. We hate our work. And many people probably can relate to that. It's Monday morning, it's 9 a.m., it's 8 a.m., and I'm like, oh. So I really encourage you, rethink some of those categories. Maybe they're not serving you. Maybe God is trying to meet you. Every Good Endeavor is an excellent book to help explore that. Another great book is by Gene Veith, and it's called, oh man, I've just lost the name of it. But Gene Veith wrote a book on God at Work. That's what it's called. And it talks about the struggle of work, because you're exactly right, Kat. A lot of people really do struggle with this. So I'd encourage you, connect yourself with God, look at your categories, and you can check out some really good books.
Yeah, well, as you
hopefully
mentioned,
in the future, I might talk more about it.
As you mentioned, though, John, of course, people can come and study with you guys, and if they want to learn more about this kind of thing as well. So, look, what are some of the ways that they can get in touch with you and find out the courses you've got to offer?
Oh, yeah. So next year we're going to do online courses part-time if you're finding like work is a struggle and you need to fit in. So we're going to do that next year. Go to spbc.org.nz and you can find out more.
Well, thank you so much, John Atchley, for joining us this morning. And if you'd like to check out their range of courses, you can go to spbc.org.nz. Thanks, John.
Thank you very much.
Amazing. I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did.
Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe and turn your notifications on so you don't miss the next video.
We'll see you in the next one.